I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today on the podcast, we have Iana Velez. She is the publisher and editor-in-chief of New York Yoga and Life magazine. This is New York's only free print and digital magazine celebrating yoga, art, music, wellness, and New York lifestyle. Iana is also the co-producer of Soulfest, a national yoga and wellness festival that celebrates diversity, accessibility, and community. Soulfest is the only free festival that includes Spanish bilingual yoga in its programming as a tribute to the city's Hispanic community and Iana's family. Iana was born and raised in New York City and has worked internationally as an art director for over 20 years in TV, film, and now print. She has also completed her 200-hour yoga teacher training certification. She teaches restorative yoga and has been practicing yoga for over 15 years. New York Yoga and Life magazine celebrates the intersection of her greatest passions, those being New York City, sharing people's stories, art, and yoga. I am thrilled to have her here. We have collaborated on events in the magazine, and in the most recent event, Iana, you just brought together such an amazing cross-section of people. So I'm just curious to have a really good conversation today about you, about yoga, about art, wellness. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I listened to that bio and I feel really tired.
That's what everybody says. They're like, their bio is red. I edited it down also, but
I'm like sitting here with my coffee saying, this is why I'm tired. I get it
now. Oh my God, I hear you. It's a lot of work to do great work in the world.
It really, it is and it isn't. You know, It's funny, when I started doing all these things, I was surprised that I was so tired. I said, but I love doing all this stuff. How can I possibly be tired? You know, when you do things you don't enjoy as much, you're like, okay, it makes sense why I'm tired, but I love this. And then you're like, oh, wait, I'm human and I still need to rest and I still need to recoup my energy. And that's why I'm tired. And that was a big awakening for me when I realized that.
Yeah. I also feel too, and you can tell me if I'm wrong for you, but I feel like we're recording this in September of 2021, and it feels like everybody's tired right now. Like it's been an exhausting ride and the world's in shambles and we're all really, really tired.
Yeah. And you know, we keep thinking back to where we were at this point last year and we're like, oh, we'll be out of this soon. And we're not. And it's, you know, having to live in the uncomfortableness is this skill set we're all getting better at, I hope.
Yeah.
I hope. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious to let's start with the magazine. Like, I'd love for you to share with us. Well, and I'm not sure if this is a chicken or an egg thing, so you can guide it. We could start with the magazine, or we could start with your own personal yoga practice, you know, because I know that they're both live together.
Yeah, for sure. They did both live together.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with yoga, you know, as we all did, you know, at some point in my life. And I said at one point, you know, I'm going to take a teacher training. I love it so much. You know, I want to get further into this. And if I'm completely honest, I wanted to learn how to do a handstand. And I said, if I do this teacher training, I'll learn a handstand. Like that was, you know, one of my goals.
Yes.
I did this training. It was one of the most beautiful months I spent in my entire life. I went to Costa Rica. You know, I was freelancing at the time, so I had that flexibility in my schedule. I was just blown away. I just met these amazing people. I was living in Costa Rica. I was learning all these beautiful things. I never learned how to do a handstand, but that was okay.
Yes.
I
I was
got back.
wondering what you were going to
Yeah.
say because I did the same thing and I'm like, well, I can kind of get up against the wall, but it's
To
not
this
pretty.
day, exactly. To this day, I am like, it's still a work in progress. And so I came back from that determined to quit my job, become a yoga teacher. I was like, this is the life for me. And I started, renting out studio spaces here in the city. And first it was just my friends, and I charged them, $5 to come take a class and give them
Yeah.
tea and cookies at the end. I realized I loved it. I wasn't great at it. I was feeling like it just was something I loved to practice actually more than teach. And that was a huge shock for me as well. I said, but I love this so much. I should want to teach. This is what you should want to do. And I had to be really honest and say, I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
This is teaching is not where my strength lies. So I went back to freelancing. I'm an art director. That's my day job. I say with my air quotes.
Yes.
And I love doing that. I'm creative. I did my yoga on the side. And then this opportunity came up to, this woman in Minnesota had started these magazines, and they wanted to do a New York version. I said, this is amazing. Like, this is really everything I ever wanted. It's creative. It's New York. It's yoga, but it's not standing in front of a class, telling
Yeah.
people the poses. And I fell in love, and I was just like, it felt like I was finally home when I started doing it. And it was interesting too, because, I had spent so many years, exploring this idea of love with other people, with relationships and all that. And it was the first time I fell in love with something I was doing, it
Yeah.
brought me such joy that didn't really depend on other people or other circumstances. And it was amazing. And that's really how it started. And working in print was, had its own set of challenges. Everyone kept saying, well, do it digital, do it. And I said, but everything's digital and I need something tangible in my hands, like your cards. I'm sure you can relate to just holding
Well,
something.
I
It's
can,
just,
and more than you
yeah.
think, because actually, as you're talking, you probably don't know this, but before I ever started this, I spent a long time in the media world here in Toronto, and I worked in magazines for a long time. And that's when also magazines were like thick and like
Right.
they were thriving at that time. So
Yeah.
I miss magazines.
Yeah.
I love magazines.
It's a lost art at this point, and they're
Yes.
so, we're actually getting ready to go to print in about 2 weeks now for our 8th issue, and you can save costs obviously on your paper quality and the weight and the gloss and all that. And it's just the one thing I just refuse, because if I'm going to make a magazine, it has to feel beautiful to me.
I
There's so
agree.
much love that goes into it. Like, it'd be such a shame at the end, at the final hour, to be like, just slap it on some crappy paper and throw it at people.
I
you
so
know
agree. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So that's the last 15 years of my life in 2 minutes. So,
I love it. And I love, like, when I'm listening to you say this, um, it's kind of, there's so many great life lessons here, but I just like to pluck out too is the idea of going to yoga teacher training, wanting to do a handstand and then finding all kinds of other things. And then similarly thinking, once you've done that training, the only path is to become a yoga teacher. And again, like learning that there are so many other things.
yeah, yeah. And I was lucky in the training that I did. I mean, that was the only training I ever did in my life, and I've been meaning to do another one, just because I've met so many teachers and just come across so many new trainings. It's just a time thing right now. But there's so much, there's just the depth of it, it's just extraordinary. And I was fortunate to be with a group of people and in a training that really encouraged you to explore everything, how to listen. That was one of the things that I learned most in the training, is to be a good teacher and essentially to be a good human, I guess. You need to listen. You need to learn how to listen to people. And I was in my early 30s at that point and barely could listen to people. I'm
Yeah.
a little better at it now, but that was one of the biggest skills that I got out of that, learning to listen and learning to just know also when things aren't the right fit, and just, finding other
Yeah.
avenues.
What else does, aside from the physical practice, what else does yoga mean to you?
Oh my God. It means it's constantly changing. And you know, when I was in my 30s, yoga was moving and letting out all that emotion through the movement and sweating everything out. And it was more about my body. Now I'm almost 50, and that's changed. And with the pandemic and everything going on in the world, my practice has changed. I just do my own practice now. I don't do, a sweaty 50-minute vinyasa in a studio packed with people and lots of energy and music playing. The thought of that right now just overwhelms me. So right now it's about quiet. It's about stillness. It's about, my puppy crawling all over me and knowing that, I'm trying to focus and there's this other little being that I'm paying attention to and working with and around and through. So that's probably surprised me the most, that I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
Yoga is this constant lesson that I don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yoga and my mom, I guess, really she's the one that really instilled that in me. But it's a journey, and it's pretty exciting.
I know when you're saying this, I just think too, I learned like same thing. Like I'm in my late 40s and now when I show up now it's just like showing up on my mat,
Yeah.
like meeting myself in the moment. And
Yeah.
sometimes I can do, amazing things. And other times it's like, yeah, just meeting myself. And it's like, this is difficult and like,
Yeah.
just breathe. And, when do you need to soften and when do you need to push yourself a little bit harder? But just this awareness that, yeah, when I was in my early 30s, I definitely did not. I was very, very disconnected.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I do miss that sweaty, just letting
Yes.
everything out through your body. I do miss that for sure. I would like to do it every now and then, and I will eventually. I'll get back to that. But it's really, I mean, now it's amazing to me. Had you said to me 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, your yoga practice will be rolling out your mat and watching HGTV and setting a timer and just moving around your body until, just getting out those kinks, I would have laughed. I'd been like, no, I must wear my Lululemon and sweat with everyone and, be fancy about it. No, it's not anymore.
So, like on that, for somebody, a lot of the people listening might have a yoga practice, but for somebody, well, for those people, but also for the people maybe who don't, like, what would you say are some of the misconceptions about yoga?
Oh my goodness, there's so many.
Yeah, I think
I don't
so
even.
too. So just you could talk about all of them or pick out a few, but I'd love to know what you think about this.
I think one of the good things about social media currently is it's really good at sort of highlighting a lot of these misconceptions and bringing to light a lot of the things that people never really spoke about. I think that's one of the most amazing things, is that there's this platform where there's a lot of useful, there's a lot of unuseful information as well, but there is a lot of useful information about what yoga is and who can do it and what it should look like. And I love that that's happening. I was just actually proofreading an article about one of the teachers, and she was saying, one of the biggest misconceptions she's run into is that curvy teachers can't teach yoga. And I was just like, wow, and it's just amazing to me. And that's, this is one of the things, that there's this platform out there, Instagram and all these things, where anyone can post, anyone can share, anyone can see anything. And we're seeing all these different things. And we, with the magazine and with the festival, these are the stories that we love to celebrate, that yoga looks like everything. We had our last in-person festival it was 2 years now. And we had been doing the in-person festivals in Harlem since 2015. And one teacher came with her father in a wheelchair, and he practiced from his wheelchair, and that was his practice. That was a beautiful moment, that yoga could look like the beautiful 20-year-old in the third row doing their practice, and yoga could look like the 80-year-old man in the front row with his daughter moving and breathing in his chair. And we all saw it, and he was right up at the front, and I had goosebumps watching this because
Yeah.
I was like, this is exactly what we're trying to celebrate, and showing, a celebration, I think, is the best word for it always. It is a practice, but it's also hopefully also a celebration of what you're doing and what you're living and how you're breathing.
I think so too. And and also just like showing up, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is what life is. Everybody has like different cards dealt to them at different points. And it's just like, yeah, breathing, being in the moment, moving our bodies, being well, whatever those circumstances might be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true.
What would you say are some other misconceptions?
Gosh, so many. I mean, age is a big one. We My mom got her certification when she was, oh God, she must have been like 64, and she decided at 64, I'm going to be a yoga teacher, and my mom is one of those people who just does what she wants and, thankfully doesn't let the preconceived notion of a young yoga teacher really affect her life or judgment. And it was a practice that she had enjoyed and had brought her, a lot of rest and joy in her life, and she wanted to share that, and she went ahead and got her training, and she was teaching in-person classes up until the pandemic shut down. So
That's amazing.
I think age is a big one.
It is a big one. And yet, I think when I did my teacher training, our instructor was older. And I just thought she brought this. Well, first of all, she had been practicing for a long time, but this maturity and this wisdom, and back to your point about listening, like she really saw people's bodies, and
Mm,
she really taught us also, yeah, it doesn't matter how old you are, first of all, but everybody's body moves differently.
yeah,
So she was fantastic. And yeah, she really shifted that perspective for me.
yeah, yeah. And we need it because hopefully for most of it is a lifelong practice.
Yes.
And as our bodies change and as our circumstances change, adjusting to all that is, it'll keep us surviving. At this point, it feels a
Yeah.
little bit like just trying to survive.
Yeah. And like, I'm going to kind of stay on this track of misconceptions, but maybe change it a little bit. I'm just thinking to the recent Soulfest that you did online. Like, there were so many different voices and perspectives. So I wanted to have you on because you do such an amazing job of collaborating and just really getting people to see the wider perspective. So do you want to pick out like a few examples of some of the people that were there, why you
Yeah,
brought them, and how their perspective is, really important to what yoga is, how it's evolving, and the future of it?
that was an amazing festival. It was our first online festival, which, if I'm honest, I was a little hesitant about. Our festivals had always been, like all festivals, about community and connection. And going online, I said, oh, God,
Mhm.
it was a little bit of a disappointment. But we knew we had this thing that we loved doing, and it had taken a different form. And we said, what, let's take advantage of this now global reach that we have, which we couldn't do before. We couldn't afford to fly these presenters in from the UK or for anywhere. We just didn't have the budget for it. So we now had this opportunity to celebrate these people practicing all over the world. We had a teacher do chair yoga. She was in a wheelchair, and that blew my mind. And it's so important, again, with age and abilities and just what you can and can't do, and opening up people's minds and ideas about that. We had Sunaina, who's this amazing woman. I believe she's Colorado based right now, talking about deities and placing of objects in your home and just paying attention to the history and the magnitude of what you're doing. And I learned so much, and I realized there had been so many things I was doing in my own life. I said, wow, she just shed so much light on just respecting this culture and the heritage and these gods and goddesses.
Could you give us an example?
So one of the things I remember she was mentioning, she was like, when you place like a Ganesh statue on the floor. Remember, you're representing a deity, you're representing an object of devotion, and you don't place it on the floor. It's an item of respect. You place it in a respected place, as you would anything that a sacred object, essentially. Placing it just on a t-shirt and doing things like this, just bringing in awareness that I had really had sort of blinders on.
Yeah.
And I was just so excited that we could share that, and every time we do these things, I learn so much. And that's why I do it. I'll be kind of honest, like we have an amazing team and we ask them, what do you guys want to learn about? And it's unrealistic to do also 8 hours of just asana on any festival. So we have to put in, talks and exploring different areas, history. You did that amazing session with the cards and intention. And I remember just people being so joyful, when they pulled the cards and they learned these things about them.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And everybody was so different. And also I had been contained because of the pandemic as well. Like, usually I'm doing workshops and talking to people. And so it like filled me up too, like I needed that connection and the reminder of like, people are actually pulling these in the real world,
Yeah. And it's amazing to see that the joy, like that was the thing that I really was blown away by. Like no one was like, oh, I got this card. Everyone was like, wow, like it just revealed a part of themselves to themselves that they just were so excited to learn, and that to me, like that was one of the most fun sessions, quite honestly. We had sort of a range of very serious and then playful things. And that was just a joyful moment. So yeah, showcasing all these different things and all these different ideas is exciting. And that was, like I said, it was our first global outreach, and having people type in, I'm in Sweden and I'm here. I'm like, wow, like this is amazing that we're all sharing this moment together. The one that we're doing in November is a little bit different because we're going to be highlighting the local communities. So it's sort of a complete shift to what we normally do. And that's, I just, when I think about what our New York City teachers went through, with everything shutting down, it broke my heart.
Yeah.
So celebrating their stories during Soulfest New York, and we're doing a DC version as well, is going to be really, really, it's really moving.
It's amazing because you're right? We're so globally connected. So that part's amazing. But yeah, all of us, need to support like the people in our local communities. And I just imagine that's going to be this incredible infusion of really good energy.
Yeah. And it's really, the stories, people's personal stories are always the thing that's the most interesting to me, because why they do exactly what you're doing right now. Why do people do the things they do, and the stories are great. They're so interesting. And we're going to be within the festival sharing these local stories, like one of the questions we're asking local teachers is, why do you love New York? Like you stayed here during a pandemic teaching yoga. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't easy, and so we want people to share with us these things, and we want our global community to learn about these amazing local teachers that have just worked so hard and always worked hard and now are working even harder.
And so what is the future plan for Soulfest, assuming, things do quote unquote get back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, we had started in Harlem, and just loved doing the festivals there, and we were expanding to DC fall of 2020, so that we were already expanding nationally, but all that had to go on hold. So hopefully, once we're back running with live in-person festivals, we can continue that expansion. But we'll see. Right now, New York and DC is a big chunk to handle. We have an amazing team. They're all volunteers. I have another business. I have the magazine. I also work a full-time job. So I think keeping it manageable is important for all of us.
And I want to just switch directions for a couple minutes. I know, art direction is your passion in your career path, but can we talk about also the intersection of art and yoga?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. When we first started doing events for the magazine. I remember having gone to a yoga event many years earlier, and it was set in a hotel space, and it was pretty much the norm in those days. You would go to events and they were in hotel spaces, and they were in these very sterile environments. And I remember just thinking, oh, I'm in this carpet, and it just felt not great to me.
Yeah.
Like, it just was this, once you got into the class and the practice, it was great. But I remember arriving there, and it didn't set off the tone for me in the right way. And there is a museum in New York City, the Rubin Museum, and I just always loved that space. And I remember thinking, God, if you could do your yoga in a beautiful space, like you're just on the right foot to start. And that was really important. And my background is in art history, and my work is as an art director. So it just, you don't need it. Obviously, I do yoga in my living room every day, but if you can enjoy it in a beautiful space and in a museum, it just, to me, adds that extra element of beauty and joy that why not?
Yeah.
Another thing that I've also noticed is, when you work in a creative field, having your mind as open as possible is very helpful, so finding practices which will look different for everybody are essential to me. So we started working on retreats. We do them at Kripalu every year, and it was the yoga and creativity retreat, and it was about trying anything, because I also understand from my own personal practice that meditation, traditional seated meditation, doesn't work for everybody. It's wonderful if you can do it, but it doesn't work for everyone. Meditation can look different for everyone. It can be your gardening, your cooking, just your walk through nature. And we wanted to share that idea that your practice can be anything, your meditation can be anything. Opening up your mind to then let this creative process flow is amazing. It will only make your creativity better. Don't hold yourself back. We did this amazing workshop every year with a teacher, and it's finger painting, and it's just the most basic thing. And it's incredible how people respond to it. It's just, they can finally be childlike, and they just, get their fingers dirty, and it's tactile. And all of a sudden, they're giggling, and they're not thinking, and they're just throwing things at, paper. And it's an amazing thing to see, and people leave generally, hopefully, rejuvenated and excited and with a more clear mind. So doing things and creating events that explore that and celebrate that, they're so much fun. They're a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but
Yes.
they're worth it, and they're just amazing.
I just love it. And it's reminding me too, we had, right when the podcast started, Robert Sturman on, who I know that you've worked
Robert.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his, in the spirit of that, I think he was at one of your retreats at Kripalu, like just his, taking like the yoga of seeing and being present and finding the beauty in people and moments and finger painting and just really being present. Because especially as we get older, like we just get into ruts, and we need that sense of like play and creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing. And just, I mean, we've had Robert at our events for years, because not only is he amazingly talented, he's a nice person. And honestly, like when you have those two things together, you're just like, it's just winning all around.
Yes.
And he does this talk, and it's about, the art of seeing. And he does them, I think he's doing them online now as well. And you don't realize, like, you look at his photos and you're like, oh, they're so pretty. The composition's so nice, but there's so much depth to them. And there's so much thoughtfulness in the photos that he takes. And then his technique, he goes through his technique. So it's a great course, because he shows you what he's done, and then he shows you how to do it, and that people walk around with their iPhones, and it's this idea that you don't need, again, fancy tools, fancy cameras, anything. It's with your iPhone. And it's all about that connection with your model and working with them in the environment, and just taking that pause to really, really look at things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great event. And again, the thing to me that's the most important is that your practice can look like anything. It can be taking a photo, it can be, we do a mala making workshop, finger painting. It's just opening up people's perceptions and minds about what they can do to be more creative.
Yeah, I love it. And this is kind of, you've answered it a little bit, but leading into my next question, because I imagine somebody listening who maybe had preconceived notions about yoga, might be like, wow, I didn't expect things to go, in this
Yeah.
direction or to hear some of these things. So, to somebody who has these ideas, like, what do you want people to know about yoga? And like, what benefits do you think it brings?
I guess, oh, so many, so many. Um, I want them to know that it's so personal. It's such a personal journey. It looks so different for every person. And, one of the best advice that I get a lot and I hear a lot is if you take a yoga class with someone and it's not your cup of tea, just keep trying. Keep trying different things. There's so many, yoga is this cornucopia of beautiful things, and you will eventually find something. You will, whether it's a restorative practice, whether it's, yoga is a meditation walking through your garden. It's deeply personal and hopefully really joyful. I think that as I just get older and, we all live through this pandemic, does it bring you joy? Are you doing this? Are you taking these classes and saying, oh, I don't like this, maybe it's, then don't do it, try something else. Because I think that's the other thing too. You don't have to like yoga. That's
Yeah,
perfectly acceptable
that's
too.
true too. It might not be your thing.
Like that's some people don't like Brussels sprouts. That's okay. It's
Yeah.
just, I think being pretty much okay and just having an open mind. And I would say definitely give it a couple of tries, you know, um, I think it would only benefit you. And if it's still not your cup of tea, that's totally fine too, um, because ultimately, like, you know, people like, we know this, you come to the things when you're ready for them, and
Yeah.
that just might not be the time for you. It might never be the time. I know people, in their 80s who, nope, not for me.
Yeah.
That's totally fine, but there are so many, the great thing about where we live in the society today is there's so many opportunities. It's not something that you have to go very far away and do, in a remote place and take time off work. You can do it in your living room. You can meet teachers. You can scroll through your phone and get started. And that's the beauty of where we're going, I think, with this future and this technology, even though I'm
Yeah.
not great at it, but the technology part.
Did your practice help you through COVID?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, like I said earlier, it just helped me just adjust and be flexible in my attitudes towards things and knowing that every plan I was going to make was probably going to change and that was okay. And I took me, especially when things got really unsettled in the city and everything we had planned just fell apart so quickly with no warning.
Yeah.
After it happening over and over again, I said, okay, there's a lesson here I'm not paying attention to because I'm getting really upset when these things aren't working out. And I know better, and the physical practice completely changed. And that was okay too, and I could beat myself up about it, but that was just not helping anyone.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was just, really, it wasn't the practice, the physical practice, but the acceptance around the changing of the physical practice that helped me keep it together. And still,
Yeah. I
you
think
know,
it's such a valuable point, right? Like,
yeah,
acceptance can be really hard. Well, we've all, we experience that all the time, but
yeah,
especially through all of this. And I hear you on the, yeah, like making plans and plans changing and
yeah,
just like in a heartbeat,
yeah,
and you just think,
everything.
well, it's not supposed to happen like this. It's like, well, it just did.
And what's so interesting too, and I just realized this as you're saying that, is like it was interesting that we're going through this and everyone's going through it too. So it's
Yes.
not you're not isolated in your, oh, I feel terrible and I can't seem to focus, because you talk to the person next to you and you're like, hey, guess what? It's okay because I feel the same. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's okay. We all are going through this, and that's oddly comforting. I mean, it could be depressing if you look at it that way, but it's also like reassuring to know these feelings that I'm feeling they're normal. And it's almost not normal to not feel scared and anxious and uncomfortable. And just knowing that we just have to fasten our seatbelts and, get ready for this bumpy ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this was amazing. I just so appreciate your time and everything that we covered. We're going to put everything in the show notes on the website. But what I would love for you to do is, tell people, where the best place is for them to connect with you, the magazine, the events, and if there's something like some words of inspiration or anything that we didn't cover that you want to add, go for it.
Oh my goodness. Words of inspiration. I don't know that I have any.
Well, you've already given us lots. So
okay, good. Okay, so I'm off the hook for that.
You're in the clear. It was more like if there was something, you're like, I just wanted to get this in.
No, I think, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And, you can find us at New York Yoga Life. You can find us on Instagram. That's the best place, at New York Yoga Life Mag. Soulfest at Soulfest Revolution. And, stay inspired, stay moving. It's just, we offer these resources with the magazine and the festivals. They're all free, and that's really important to us, that they be free, that people have access to all these ideas and these peoples and these communities. So please, check it out and share it if you want and enjoy it.
Awesome. Yes, I highly encourage you to check it out because the magazine's beautiful. The content is amazing and the events are also amazing, whether you're attending them in person or online. So, Iana, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.